So, continuing the trend with what we were talking about, or about, depends on where you come from, the book. What is it? Where did it come from? How did it come to be? Well, let me tell you this, motherfucker. I believe, if my memory, well, no, it's not my memory, I'll be honest. If my speculation serves me right, the book had started in 2012 of some point, in August of 2012. Now, I've kind of talked about it before, but we're going to have this down as kind of like a log, and we're going to go through to catalog how the creation of the book happened, because one day I'll want to remember all this. So, from my vaguest memories, I've talked about it before, but we're going to do it this way. I was always fascinated with Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and all that stuff. Star Wars I grew up with. I remember I saw the original ones before I saw the first three. By the time I really realized episode 1 and 2 existed, it was like a little bit before episode 2 had come out, and then I remember I had to see episode 1 on television. 2, I don't remember how I saw it. 3 I actually saw in the movie theaters with my friend. I don't remember if that was 2006, 2003. I think it's 2006 when Revenge of the Sith came out, or was it 2004? I don't know. I'm honestly, I can't quite remember. But I do remember seeing it with my friend. Now, Lord of the Rings I'd never heard of until in our school they had us go and watch the movies. And if I remember correctly, the first and second one had already come out, and then we saw the third one, brand new, Return of the King, in the theaters. And I was just like, I loved Star Wars up to that point, so whenever the fuck Return of the King came out, when I saw the Lord of the Rings series, I was like in awe, because it was just like, I never really knew about fantasy and all this stuff. This was before that, Star Wars, and then Lord of the Rings. Other than that, I never heard of fantasy and shit like that. It was just not in my wheelhouse. I didn't enjoy reading, so I didn't look for this stuff like, oh yeah, I read all these stories. I hated it. I fucking hated reading. So I didn't do it when I was growing up. And, we didn't have a lot of money, so I wasn't exposed to a lot of movies and shit. We didn't watch a lot of that stuff. Whatever the fuck was on free television, or whatever my parents paid for, I don't even remember. I remember prime time. But whatever was going on there, but for the most part, we would play outside. And, we'd play, like, Navy, or we'd play Army, or whatever it was. We'd play cars and shit. So my growing up, it was only really those two. I never really knew there was more. Even into my adulthood, I never knew there was more types of fantasies and stuff. Just something out of whatever, it wasn't a part of my life. And so I really came at this book so ignorant, and I still do. There are still moments where I'm thinking of doing things, and I'm sure when you hear it out loud, you're like drawing conclusions to other things already made, and I'm sitting here like thinking that it's the first person to ever do it. I'm not really well versed in this world on a lot of things, it seems to be. I feel like I'm in my own little bubble, and I just don't know things are happening and existing around me. So, whatever. That's just how it goes. But in 2012, around that time, those two things I had really ingested, I'd really enjoyed. I played a lot of Star Wars video games. I played a few Lord of the Rings video games at this age. but I mostly just enjoyed the movies and stuff. I probably tried to read Lord of the Rings, but I didn't want it. I was like, yeah, fuck, why would I read it? The movies are out. It just was really hard for me to differentiate between a book and a movie. You know, I just remember hearing people say, well, the books are better, you know. Books are better than movies. I'm like, I don't know about that, because the books don't read themselves. So, yeah, very, very ignorant person. And around that time, I don't know what it, you know, what really led to all this stuff, but I do know that I started to find around this time in 2011 and probably 2010-ish, maybe, I don't know, Elder Scrolls. That was huge for me. I never heard of this. The first time I heard of Elder Scrolls was, let's see, I would have been in 10th or 11th grade was the first time I heard, which would have been 2007 or 8. I had ever heard of Elder Scrolls. Never heard of it before then. And the reason I found it was my friend gave me his Xbox. I've talked about this before. I'm starting to remember now. And one of the games that came with his Xbox was Morrowind. And I played the shit out of it. Not very well. Trust me, I would just go through one of his plays and like, okay, he's pretty high level here. I'm going to just start right here and just run around and do nothing. And I was very autistic when I played. I didn't really like, why would I do quests and stuff? I'll just walk around and kill things. And that's still how I play video games. And that's really it, man. Like, video game playing, not very well, but video game playing and Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. That was kind of what shaped, you know, the beginning of this. And then eventually I remember I found Half-Life. And I played that, and I played Half-Life 1 and 2. And those are the main things that really started to shape, like, wow, wouldn't it be really cool if I, like, I don't know, like, I don't know what it was, like, I wish I could say, like, oh, I remember why I wanted to do this. I don't. But for some reason, I was like, I kind of wanted to create my own little thing. And Adventure Time was on around that time, so I was really watching that and thinking like, oh man, I really should. I should make my own place, kind of thing. And so, and that's really where it began, with those elements in my head swimming around, dancing around. You know, you could say very casual fantasy elements, you know, it's like very, to the casual person, easy to find, like Skyrim, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Half-Life, and Adventure Time, and that was the component of shaping that would lead to where we are now. Though I do know, and it's never been like this since, at that time, as I was slowly getting into this, my imagination was so vivid. It was so good. Like, all the time I would keep thinking of new things and new things and new things, and it was fun then. It was really fun to just kind of come up with these new things, man, like out of nowhere. It just, like, being mind blown about your first creations of inside the fog, in the darkness. You know, looking back, it's more fun then, but now it's more arduous, where now it's like you got to contemplate, like, how can you make things work, and what factions you need to make, and, you know, all this shit, and it's more rigid and stuff, and fully fleshed in a sense. But at that time, it was just really fun. It was super fun. So I would jump into this and create as much as I could. Basically just grabbing everything I could in my mind and compiling it and seeing what I could make, like, of this place. And I originally thought a science fiction fantasy would be where I start. Like, that would be probably it, because I like I like Star Wars, but I didn't like other science fiction, and I didn't know at the time. But Star Wars is more science fantasy than science fiction, or whatever they call it, and that's probably the only reason I like it. But yeah, man, just looking at all this and just seeing where it started, I identify instantly a hero needing to have a journey. I didn't know about the whole, Joseph Campbell stuff and these are the tropes and all that. Like, it became something that I learned during this. And it's so amazing that this book and every single thing inside of it is the learning. It's me learning everything. That's the crazy part. Like, this book isn't just some book I fucking wrote. Here you go, I wrote this goddamn book, and I sat down and I did, but it's me learning how to do everything. How to just be an adult, learning how to write, how to study, how to take notes, learning how to come up with ideas, learning how to problem solve. All this shit is because of this. And this is the one that it all started with. And I just think it's interesting to kind of look back and see that part where you become who you are because of a fantasy world. It's kind of weird to say that, but it's so very true. And I just, from the beginning, man, from the very beginning, the idea of something to be forgotten, something forgotten, something lost, was its main, what's the word? Theme. I couldn't tell you what it was about that, but for whatever reason, that was something that I thought, I gotta have that. Because, that's always been an issue in my life, is forgetting stuff and being forgetful, and maybe that's where it was born. I was always like, you didn't remember that? You don't remember? And I'm always like, I don't know. That was always something that I struggle with, so maybe that's why forgotten was such a really important thing to me. I don't know. It still is the name of the book, Forgotten. The Forgotten Chronicles. It's just each book's called something. Like the Forgotten Revelation is the first book. The second book is The Forgotten Sacrifice. The third book I have yet to name. But that theme still runs through it. It's a little bit more hidden instead of on the nose than it used to be. But just already looking back at all this stuff, I had the Empire, the big bad guys. I had the Keepers of Faith, the Jedi. And I had the hero, Luke. I mean, I wasn't very good in my imagination. Obviously. I was like, maybe I won't call him the Empire, I'll call him the Corporation. It'll be more like that. Not even knowing what corporation means. Just because mind you, I'm 20-something years old. I was very stupid, man. I still am, but I was so much more back then. I didn't know anything. So ignorant, dude. So fucking ignorant. Didn't even know what the word corporate meant. I was like, I don't know what that means. It sounds evil. If you asked me what it meant back then, I'd be like, I don't know. But still to this day, I'm like, I don't know. A bunch of fucking people in suits sitting in a room together making decisions. I don't fucking know. But yeah, just looking back, it's all about compiling information and creating the world. And the first drafts of the world are right there. Those are the first two drafts of what maybe this place is. As you can see on that top one there, the world's either very small or those land masses are absolutely massive compared to now. Compared to right now, very different. I mean, I don't even see the South there. The South was invented by Kevin at some point. But the main thing with these stories is I have all these journals, and I'll maybe show them a bit more. It's hard to know if I should ever show them, but maybe I will a bit more. You can kind of begin to see the creation of it through that. I was able to, luckily, and I have a bunch, I have a whole pile of, like, I'll show you in here. So I have the last ones here, these ones, those journals. I obviously have this one here, but I have these, and then I think I have, like, yeah, maybe I have some down here. No, I think I have, I don't know, somewhere else. There's a few more journals. But as you can see now, I have a fucking filing cabinet full of information because of this goddamn book. Anyway, that's besides the point. I've been able to, like, I wrote. I've always been, like, taking notes and writing things down and planning things and using these journals to shape the world. And luckily I know the order of them also, because I was not, the one thing I didn't do was date. I never dated anything. Nothing has dates on it. So I don't know when I wrote it, but I know that I did write it. So from the very beginning, it's been just kind of a journey like that. And maybe what I want to do on this series is to kind of walk through that, and I won't read it word for word because I'll be honest, man, I mean, my writing was atrocious. Even though it, mostly because it was only for me, so why do I need to write flowery for myself? But it was horrible. Absolutely horrible. So I will do readings. I'll just have to, like, edit my reading here. And we'll kind of go into what exactly the books are. Because I think it's important to see where they came from, to let you know what was going on in my life. And if I can remember, what I'll do is I'll start talking about, like, well, around that time this was going on, blah, 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 like that. That's probably what I'll do while I'm reading it. If I have a memory trigger, I'll kind of go through it. But in its beginning here, I was in a band, learning how to play music, because I was, I was very naive to think it'd be that easy, and it was, in those days, it was so hard. Now I don't know why it was so hard, but it was. Back then when I was playing, because I played bass, and just thinking back about practicing with Kevin, who is the drummer in the band, and Billy, who is not a part of the book, but he's close to it. He's got his own channel. We used to do videos together and stuff, but I'll make a link to his channel. But the three of us would just play music and practice and practice and practice and practice and practice, and that's all my life was playing the bass in this band, this little three-piece band, and going home and working on this shit. I didn't have a job. I was a fucking loser and I was broke, but I was the happiest I have ever been in my life because I didn't have a job. I was just so happy. All I had to do was go and play music and come home and fucking baked and fucking write fantasy. Like, what a great life that was. That was a great time for me. The best time. I look back at that time fondly, even though I was terrified the entire time, just because it was so tough. But I think the reasoning I went back to this fantasy is because as I would go out with these two guys who were experienced guys in my mind, they had just got back from the war, and they were just trying to find themselves, and I just looked up to them like these older guys, like they're gonna teach me how to fucking finally be a man, kind of, I guess, I would imagine is what I felt like subconsciously. And it was a lot, because I was pushed out of my comfort zone quite a bit, and it was a little, what's the word, overwhelming. And so I would come back and go to my little fantasy world and just live that. And so the fantasy world in the beginning turned from a fun little getaway into a place of, what's the word I'm thinking of? A place of like growth, a place to find oneself, a place to decipher what's going on in their lives through it. That wasn't a conscious thing that I noticed, but as I'm reflecting back, that's definitely what I started doing, because the beginnings of this is just so like, there'll be this, and then there's ancient robots, and there's going to be, here's what the people are like, and here's what the technology looks like, and these are what the keepers are, and here's where everyone lived, and all this stuff, all this crazy shit. I just kept making, but then you start seeing, after all this fun making stuff, you start to see me exploring people. And I start to see me noticing things about people more. Noticing more deeper things in life. Going here to vent about how I feel. Going here to say how I look at the world. That's when it started to really shift. It took a few years for that shift to really take hold, but in its beginnings it wasn't there at all. It was pure fantasy. Now, this is merely the introduction video to all this, so I know I'm a little everywhere, but I do want to have some points I make. The main bulk of the journals are these ones. These are the ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of them. These are the ones that the book, like if it wasn't for these, there would be no book. These are the ones I really want to focus on, because to this day, everything that's, as you can fucking see, everything that's inside of these books this is like the playbook. That's what these are. Like, these are journals. These are like lore creation. This is idea thinking, story writing, just bitching about my life. Everything that was me for these years is in here. This is the source right here. One of these days I'll get it bound and have it into a big book, because it'd be a pretty thick book. We go back to this, I do at least, every time there's a question. Jacob asked me where people lived and how long. I'm gonna go back to here and see when I originally thought that. And even though along the way things have changed, and go, yeah, these people live here, this lives there, and people from Dubois live here. Well, originally people from Dubois, I said, lived right down here in the south where Tantorum is. What do we do about that? We use it as a source, as if it's history. And I say, well, if they live down there, and they don't anymore, then they used to. So these people have been around longer, so maybe they moved from here to there. And then you look in here and you find they used to be called this. I'm like, well, what does that mean? We make the new lore always in accordance with the old lore. It's the source. I don't know how to explain it better than that. Like, whatever I have, I'm stumped. I will always go back to these journals. As you can see all the times I had to make notes and things. I go back to it, I find a thing and say, this is what it is, because this originally was my idea. And we're going to use my original idea, because throughout each journal, sometimes an idea will evolve. Forgotten King was not the same. Like, from Forgotten King in this is not the same as Forgotten King in the last journal, which is not the same as the Forgotten King right now in my mind. But the evolution of that character I will always keep in mind. Well, how did he get to that point? Well, that's exactly how he will in the book too. So these journals are key, and there's more than those. This is the latest one. So but then there's like a bunch of, like, all those other ones I showed. All these like legal pads are full of things too. Honestly. So it's probably like a stack this big of me writing about things. And as I said, they're journals about me complaining about my day. They're lore building. They are character building, finding names. There's a lot of them that are just about how to work on the story. There's poetry in here, songs in here. There's a lot of shit, I'll be honest. Meditations, things that I came up with when I was meditating and creating some form of a language. That's all it's full of, right? But it's the ingredient. It's always going to be the source. So before I really like dive into the series of what the book is, I think it's really important just in the next video to kind of really go into what the source truly is and how it all works and everything. I can't get over like how crazy it is when I see all this. When I look at these fucking books and I just think, or these notebooks, like I sat down and was just filling these up for I don't even know how long. When was this one? 2017 is when I saw 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 5 years. And it's funny, there's 5 of them, so I wonder if they're broken up a year, I don't know. But in 5 years, I did all of this just for a world. Because every time, like, I didn't think of them as that, but every time I had a new idea, I'm like, ooh, a new character doing this in this place, and this is going on. Eventually, I'd be like, you know what? Maybe that's in the book too. So the world grew, because every time I came up with a new story, every time I came up with a new character, at the time I didn't think of it, but now it's obvious. I would always just like, why don't I put them in the book too and say that there's more places out there? And that's where Aya is at. Well, you'll learn about her. Or like Alistar, or Quinlan and all. Like these characters were separate, but they became in the same realm. So in my mind, this realm that all these characters are, all my lore and everything, wasn't necessarily a fantasy world, but it was a world within my mind. Like, how do I word this? I never really like set out to like fantasy world time. It just became that. All this stuff needed a place, and this place needed to be made, and I was like, well, fuck, I guess I gotta make this fucking place. And it needed to be filled up and filled up and filled up. And anytime I had any idea, it doesn't even matter. I could be sitting here going like, ooh, wouldn't it be crazy if like this medieval dude is escaping from the plague and then this stuff happens, blah, 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 and I'll like come up with a story. I won't ever think like, oh, that'll be like a real, like, you know, my own little short story here. Like, no, it's going to go in the book. This medieval era existed in this book now, and so did this plague. So that's what that has to be. It just, everything I'll ever do will go into this world, which is in my head, which is honestly the realm of the book. Realm of the book is the mind of the creator. At least that's what the characters all believe. You know, that they don't live in necessarily in a world; they live in the mind of a god, which is kind of a medieval theologian kind of idea, but I like it, you know, because it makes sense. It's true. Only now is the world growing like it never has before. You know, you don't plan any of this stuff. I might as well add this to the one. When did I even start writing in it? The War and Freight, and well, I'll never know. From 2017 to 2020, there was not a lot of book writing going on. There was a break period there. There was some. Me and Jacob. I'm lying. No, there was. It must have been 2019 and 20, or probably the dead years. Maybe. I don't know. I'm so bad about remembering my life. I hate that I just don't know what happened. I'll have to ask other people what I was doing, maybe, and they'll be able to. Kevin's the guy. He's the guy that'll be like, I know exactly what you were doing. Don't you remember? Like, no, I have no idea. What did I do? you came over, you said this, and this is what your hair looked like at that time, and remember you were doing this, and now. Like, fucking, how do you remember this stuff? I'm sitting here trying to remember a week ago. Like, what did I do? Who am I? What did I talk about already on one of the, I don't know, we'll talk about it again. Every video is the same. Exact same. Like, I didn't realize I talked about this. I don't watch the videos. Oh, anyway. So, just an introduction into this is what this is. A very, very, as you can tell, I like doing things stream of consciousness. I'm not a big planner. I'm sorry. That's just not who I am. I don't like to sit down, like, we'll talk about this, this, and that. I'll have edits. Like, no, I'm going to sit down, I'm a riff. I'm a riffer. That's how I've ever done music. That's how I do writing. That's how I do everything. I'll riff it, and we'll see what happens. Stream of consciousness. How good is your creative element in the moment? Anybody can plan something, but can you do it in the moment? That's the hard part. Most people can't. This is an act. I don't practice this shit. But yeah, we will definitely, when we begin, we'll just kind of go through each journal, and I'll highlight some of the big moments of them, and each video will be its own journal, which will be a separate series. And from that point, we'll take the story, and you'll first of all watch the story take shape. Then after the journals, we can go right into what the story's actually about and what's going to happen, and at least spoiler free what's going to happen. So something to stick, something to look forward to. I will do a reading tomorrow of the philosophy thing. Don't remember that. I hope. I'll try. I always try. I still gotta edit. I have a lot of things I have to do. God damn it.